A state of economical flux has become increasingly more obvious in the area of Greater Manchester, with over 2 million people in its population. The growth of its carbon footprint has been something that needs attention drawn to. The public transportation system of Manchester, although effective in getting the population to their destination, has made a huge impact on the city's carbon footprint, and this number is increasing. But help is on the way. Or rather, it has been here for a number of years, and it's up to us as a city to accept their help. We joined the director of the Greater Manchester's local interaction platform, Beth Perry, to see what our options are to sustaining a low-carbon culture.
Well, what is a low-carbon culture? Actually, I think low-carbon culture is quite important for a number of reasons. If you look at what national governments and local governments are trying to do, they're all trying to reduce carbon emissions. So there's various targets for how much we need to reduce the amount of carbon we produce. So we're a research centre at Salford University. We've had some funding from a Swedish organisation called Mistra Urban Futures and some money from our local university to try and set up different partnerships with organisations in Greater Manchester. One of these partnerships, they were interested in trying to reduce the number of websites that there are around sustainability in Greater Manchester. And we had a joint idea really. We were interested in how you can communicate better, what the challenges and suggestions and solutions might be for creating more sustainable cities. We conjured up this idea of having a single portal that would be a platform for knowledge sharing. It would reduce the number of websites that there were, so it was easier to find the information you might need. And it would also help us reduce the communication gap, the democratic deficit between the people who are making decisions about Greater Manchester and the people who actually live here.
So how can one person make a difference to our carbon culture? Addiction counsellor Kate Perry explores the nature of how food addiction can actually affect our CO2 emissions.
The impact of sugar and food addictions on local and global CO2 emissions is massive. The fast food giants and the sugar industries that are feeding and profiting from these addictions, they have manufacturing and distribution processes which add to their carbon footprint, but it actually goes further than this. It trickles down to the individual, where sugar and food addictions create a set of behaviours in an individual, and some of these behaviours will actually increase the carbon footprint of that individual. One of the key elements in creating a sustainable low carbon culture is behavioural change. These children, they're growing up in a digital world, so whether we're teaching them about healthy eating and healthy lifestyles, or the environment and their own carbon footprints and CO2 emissions in general, we need to engage them with positive media messages.
There are so many ways that we can reduce our own carbon footprint, but with the 21st century just beginning, the technological industry is something to take into account. Beth speaks of a growing development at the BBC that revolves around reducing the carbon footprint.
When we're thinking about what is a low carbon culture, we've been talking with the BBC to understand what they're doing around Albert the Carbon Calculator. You know, you've got a great big complex over in Media City. They need to think about their environmental impact in terms of the actual site, but there's also a question over what large cultural organisations, whether it's the BBC or the Lowry or the Imperial War Museum, can be doing to build a low carbon culture.
We joined Richard Smith, who is the project manager for sustainable production at the BBC, to speak about his programme Albert, the Carbon Calculator.
The inspiration for Albert, the Carbon Calculator, was really us being aware that in order to get people to have a sense of responsibility about what they can practically do to reduce their carbon footprint and be more sustainable in general, they had to know what their impact was. Not only does it produce a figure which clearly shows what the estimated carbon footprint of that production is, but it also highlights to the Albert user, and of course the people that the users share that information with, what their environmental impacts are, what contributes to it. One really important point about Albert is that Albert is not inherently going to make your production more sustainable simply because you've asked a few questions, answered a few questions and got a carbon footprint out at the other end. Like any exercise involving measurement, you have to actually practically do something with the information to really make it worthwhile. We feel that we've made quite a lot of progress through the creation of Albert the Carbon Calculator, by sharing Albert with the rest of the industry through a partnership with BAFTA, by building a website called Media Greenhouse with BAFTA, which contains hundreds of tips, case studies, suppliers, all of whom are contributing to sustainability within the production industry.